Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the October 3rd, 2003 Riverfront Design Review Committee. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Paul Dudman. Anthony Blatt.
Here.
Kenny Dennis. Brian Doherty. John Joyce. Here. Don Casperite. Here. Richie Splitt. David Yost. David Yost? David Yost. Here. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Second item on the agenda is approval of the September minutes, which are in your packet. You've had an opportunity to review them. If there's any comments, if there's not any comments, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I move approval.
Moved by Mr. Joyce, second by Mr. Doherty. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3 is cases withdrawn, which there are none. Item number 4 is continuance requests, which there are none. Item number 5 is a consent docket, and there's none. Item number 6, cases for individual consideration. The first case is SRCA 13-00025 at 1300 Southwest 3rd Street.
This is a planned unit development that came to you several years ago for a concrete batch plant in the Farmers Market District, and the reason that it's coming back for review is because the original certificate of approval that we issued had expired. So they're coming back in for a new certificate of approval with a few modifications to the original plan. If that's why it looks familiar, you'll remember that that was done a few years ago.
Thank you. Is the applicant present?
Yes, sir.
Good morning. State your name.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Brian Kuhn. I'm with Hewitt Zollers, representing the applicant. Again, as Aubrey said, this was before you in 2009. Boral Materials, which is a worldwide materials handling company, bought Schwartz. I don't know all the business agreements, and I don't know that matters, but we came before you representing Boral at the time. I-40 was being realigned back then. The existing batch plant, as you can see on the picture, is immediately north of the railroad tracks and immediately southeast of Exchange Avenue. Schwartz had operated this location for many years. They have access underneath Exchange, a pretty wide access to get to the old batch plant. It is old, it doesn't look good, and Boral wanted to get rid of that batch plant and build onto the existing site. At the time, their plan was that used to be a really ugly storage area, maybe still is in a way. They want to completely take that out, put all new concrete in, and build a new batch plant. We went through the Planning Commission, got the PUD approved. I got a building permit. Boral has done some of the work. They've started with some of the concrete work, removed some of the old buildings, built the foundation of the batch plant, and then the economy stopped them, and Boral has gone away. Now Schwartz has the property back. Schwartz would like to continue. If you remember this, and probably in your packet, there's some pictures of the plant. It's got some perforated corrugated metal panels and acrylic panels. So at night, there's a picture of it there. It will be lit up. It will be a very attractive building. They're also building an 8-foot masonry wall on 3rd Street between them and the Farmers Market building, as well as a 6-foot masonry wall on Exchange to block any of the view of any of the materials or trucks that are on the site. So again, the whole site will be new concrete, new facility. And once this site is up and running, or this plant is up and running, the old patch plant will be removed. And like I said, it's pretty ugly if you're driving by seeing the old plant. But anyway, just here to seek reapproval. Again, it was approved back in 2009, and just with the economy, it just slowed things down. So answer any questions if you have any.
Are there any comments from staff?
No, the only difference between this plan and the original that you approved was that originally we did not have the construction of the office building. The existing one was deteriorating, so they're tearing that one down and building a new one in the same place. We did not have the parking lot on the case before. We now have that, so that's the only marked difference from what you approved originally. And we recommend approval based on the fact that it complies with the PUD ordinance.
Okay, Scotty, you're saying that we approved it. I remember denying an application. It went on to the Board of Adjustment and was ultimately approved, but we didn't approve it. So
We were asked to give a recommendation on the rezoning of it, and that's where we recommended denial. When it was approved by the Planning Commission, then we administratively approved the project because at that point it then complied with the ordinance and was administratively approvable.
It went to Planning Commission, not Board of Adjustment, I believe. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
are you ready for comments from the board? Could I have some? Okay. I think we all remember the comments that former Mayor Kirk Humphreys made at one of our last meetings where we were talking about a business that was far less industrial, shall we say, than this one is. I think that maybe the legalities of this one are different because of the PUD, but at the same time, I think that there's a reason that this board or this committee is not made up entirely of lawyers. And I feel like we're not really, our judgment is not necessarily bound by all the legalities of everything. We're just making our recommendation. I just can't imagine a use that's more sort of inappropriate to what we are after than a concrete mixing plant. I mean, not so much the aesthetics of it. I remember from a previous meeting that Scott Dedman of ADG talked to us, and he came up with a real creative design that's going to make the thing look as good as a concrete batch plant probably can look. But the operation of a concrete batch plant is nothing but, you got truck after truck that's coming in, that's delivering aggregates that they're dumping. There's truck after truck, ready-mix trucks that are coming in and out of there. It's just could not be a more heavy industrial use that's sort of totally contrary to our whole reason for being here. So I just kind of throw that out.
I might like to make an observation. I appreciate those comments, and there's some validity to them, but we're also, all along Exchange is an industrial area, and even if this were to be turned down, we'd still have a significantly industrial area that isn't going to change. If we can upgrade the industrial area, which I think this does, I think that's probably still, maybe it's not all that we'd ideally like to have in the corridor of the river, but in light of the history of this and also the surrounding industrial around it, I think it's an improvement of our situation.
This is the one meeting I was not at when this was held originally, and I just read through it on the minutes, and I had recognized that it had been turned down, and then the way I understood it from this history reading, it had gone back and then had been a PUD, so now we're working with it. I had a couple of observations that I think would not cost anything but would make a huge difference if, in fact, we are really serious about the landscaping. One is they have Foster's Holly, and I don't know why Foster's Holly. I presume Holly was selected because they were trying to get within the landscape point system, and it was an evergreen. But Foster's Holly is tolerant of 4.5 pH, and if you just have a regular site, it's probably not much less next to a batch plant, which typically is even more alkaline. So I would strongly suggest that you consider moving it to Nellie Stevens Holly. It's going to be probably the same cost, and there's the difference in what's going to die in a year and what's going to have a chance of living. The other thing is you have that Catawba crepe myrtle. It was introduced by the National Arboretum in '67, but it's only rated, Clemson probably does the best evaluation, it's only rated as good. I haven't seen it perform here, and so it performs down through southeastern Oklahoma. Probably go back and you can get one of like color, like everything, but will have a cold tolerance. So if you move to Tuscarora or Natchez or one of the other ones, you're probably going to have success. I don't think you're going to have success with a variety that's called.
We will make that change.
Okay.
Any other comments? Scotty, how was the PUD, this was back whenever the applicants were putting their projects into PUDs, and then when they were placed in the PUD, they were actually extracted from our review? Is that the case that we're in here? It's coming back because it's kind of timed out, but
it appears that, even though it has been rezoned to a PUD and is subject to those regulations, it still requires a CA from us because we have retained the overlay, but we're bound by the regulations in the PUD.
Okay, we are bound by the regulations in the PUD. Okay. And it complies with the PUD?
It does comply with the PUD.
Okay.
Well, I would agree with John that it's not the ideal use that we'd like to see in our overlay district, but if it would be abandoned, it would be far less desirable than it would be as an operating business. And I supported it at the time. Actually, I think we, as a commission, denied it, or a committee denied it. But I think that all things considered, and based on the staff's evaluation, that I'm going to support it, and I'm going to move for approval.
I've got a motion by Mr. Yost and a second by Mr. Kasperite. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, was there anybody who wished to speak? Can I go back? That's error on my part. Okay. I apologize. Item B is SRCA 13-00026 at 725 South Lincoln Boulevard in the Regatta District. Aubrey?
This project is to install the windscreen along the Oklahoma River, and I believe the applicant came and gave a presentation last month on this project, and so now they're back seeking approval.
Is the applicant present?
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Ken Giannone. I'm a project manager in the MAPS office. And as Aubrey said, we actually gave a presentation last month about this, and we're just here seeking approval today. Obviously, answer any questions you may have.
Got any staff comments?
We don't have any objection to it. However, because it's difficult to classify this type of a new innovative proposal, I have been told by the Development Center that it will more than likely be required to be called a fence, and as such it doesn't comply with any of the city or the Riverfront fence ordinance regulations, so it will need a recommendation from the board for a variance to the height of the fence and the materials.
Any comments?
I just have one question. I sit on the River Trust and the MAPS 3 oversight, so I've seen this project numerous times, and it's evolved in all the different renditions. This is probably the first time I've ever seen about the actual trees, because I know there have been comments in some of the meetings, good, they're working with all the trees behind it, and here 68 trees are going out. Is there a plan for that? I think it's a public relations type of thing. If we get ready to do it and we start seeing a bunch of clear cutting of a bunch of trees there, I think there might be a real black eye on what that is, because, like I said, until now, and maybe I've missed it, but I don't think I've ever missed it, I think the thought is everybody's been thinking that they were going to work with the trees. Even in Rand's renditioning, it shows all the silhouettes of the trees behind it. So I think we need to think through what that plan is. If 68 have to go for construction, then maybe, are these getting moved? Are they too big to move? And they're not going to be moved or something. But I think we need to do something before somebody just comes in and cuts them down.
And I know it's been discussed, but I'd like to actually pass this off to Ian Ainsley, who's actually the lead architect for Elliott Associates. Probably answer that better than I can.
The site conditions with all of the underground utilities, there are 4 gas pipelines over there, as well as OG&E easements as well that we had to thread the windscreen through. And as a result of that, we weren't able to dodge all of the trees, and some of the trees will have to be cut down or removed to be able to install it. But we've done as much as we can to minimize that and keep the number of trees that are impacted to an absolute minimum. And unfortunately, because the site is over 500 meters long, it ends up being in the neighborhood of 68 or 70 trees that will be impacted by it.
I just think my experience over the years is better be on the proactive than the reactive. So if there is a way to sit there, and if there are some that are salvageable, that makes sense to salvage, or if there's something like that, I would sure be careful about that, because I think 68 is a significant amount, and if that starts going out in the public, that all at once there's this without somebody doing proactive, and then you're just reacting to a story. I think I would just be real careful about that, because I just know that there's been a lot of comments in meetings, great, they're working around all the trees, and I understand that a lot of times you have to. I don't want this to be an embarrassment to everybody on this.
What percentage of the tree cover that's there now do those 68 trees represent?
Those 68, I believe, would be less than a quarter of the trees that run the length of the site.
So there'll still be significant tree cover, and
there will
some larger trees?
Yes, there will still be trees out there. And part of the concern also is having the trees that do remain be far enough away that they don't end up growing into the screen and becoming a maintenance issue where it either damages the windscreen or where somebody has to be out there doing something, pruning the trees to maintain them and keep them out of keep them from.
Well, I agree with Brian completely. I think that the city would be well served to set an example of remediating what damage they have to do to the tree cover. It doesn't have to be huge trees, but I think appropriate species of trees in an appropriate number would be a very important PR thing, and in reality it would be an important amenity. I mean, we all want that area to look as nice as possible and as natural as possible, and that windscreen is totally unnatural, but it's necessary, apparently. So I think we ought to do everything we can to restore as much natural beauty to that shoreline as possible.
I think we could look at adding trees into the project as an add alternate. Currently, our estimates have the project as it is currently designed very close to the budget, just under the budget, not taking any of the add alternates right now, and I think we could certainly look at adding some trees to the project as another add alternate.
I think the other thing is sometimes you're just replacing, sometimes you just make a commitment that so many other trees are going to be planted on down the river or something, but I just caution that usually if you don't plan on it, it really hits you, and so I just don't want this to be an embarrassment later on.
I have a kind of a preliminary question. Just, the logic behind this screen is that somehow it kind of makes for a more fair plane surface or whatever, right? That could kind of explain, though, I'm sure that's not something that you guys just cooked up in your office. Was there some sort of consultant or something that was involved in that, just the whole thermodynamics or whatever it is of that, yeah?
There was. We consulted with CPP wind engineers out of Fort Collins, Colorado. They've done other windscreens and snow screen projects similar to this, and wind engineering is their specialty. They, based on seasonal and local wind speeds and the topography out at the river, they determined that a 40-foot screen approximately 125 feet from the south shore would block the prevailing winds and give a more even surface across the water for any of the race competitions down there. They determined it's not possible to make a perfect condition on the river, but it makes it more equitable, and the 10-foot gap underneath the bottom of the windscreen is there so that we're not throwing all of the wind onto the north shore and making the south lanes completely glass-like, so you get a little bit of wind coming underneath there to still cause a disturbance and keep the surface relatively equal all the way across.
So yeah, I see. It's all about making it equal, not that we're thinking that we're going to eliminate the wind on the whole river.
It's not going to stop it. It's going to make it more equitable.
Going back to the trees, has there been any study done as to whether or not some of the trees that are scheduled to be removed could be spaded and relocated, just based on species?
There has not been any study on that, to my knowledge. I haven't been a part of any conversations about that.
How old are the trees that are there?
They would have been planted in one of the previous projects. I'm not sure. I've not been here long enough to know how long ago those were planted.
I think most of them were planted in that first phase, the first, second, and third phase of the tree planting on the river. But like I said, they made such a big deal about how many trees were being planted and all that, that I just think that, and like I said, I've said in all the meetings, and I hadn't heard any discussion about the number of trees, but I have heard many comments about, isn't this great when you see the silhouettes behind that they're saving the trees. So I just think now, if the trees are going down, there needs to be some kind of proactive plan for, probably best scenario, spading the ones that make sense, that really are spadable, possibly, and then having some kind of contingent that we're going to plant other trees. Doesn't have to be right there, but some kind of remediation for that. I think that's a pretty good defense. If not, I think you could run into quite a bit of problem.
Going back to the presentation last month, as I remember, wasn't the coating, wasn't that an ad alternate as well?
The coating on the steel structure is part of the base bid. Okay. The coating on the aluminum panels is an ad alternate. We have two ad alternates for that. One is for the powder coating to be done by the aluminum panel manufacturer, and the other one is for the powder coating to be done by a third party. We're expecting to see a little bit of difference in that cost and want to be able to evaluate that at bid time. There is a third ad alternate for the steel structure, instead of being powder coated, to be a high performance coating that would be a thicker, more durable coating even than the powder coat finish.
Well, even if you agree to, I guess what I'm kind of questioning is, if we agreed to do some kind of landscaping as an ad alternate, where does it fall in the priority list of all these things?
The way the ad alternates are set up, the city can elect to take whichever ones fit within the budget at their discretion. So the priority list would be set by the city.
Well, I think you're hearing what our priority is. Okay.
Is there any further comments? A lot of different things. Does anybody want to try to craft a motion? Or is there anybody else that would like to speak to this? Okay. Thank
you. Would make the motion that we approve the windscreen project, I guess, SRCA 130026, with a recommendation from this board that a proactive approach is taken for, if the trees in fact need to be removed, if they can be reevaluated and you find out you don't really need to remove all those, that would be the better scenario. But if they do need to be removed in that number, that a proactive approach is made to try to make an equitable substitution or a remediation or something for those that are removed.
Second.
you. Was there anything about the finish?
Yeah. Is powder coating, do we need to go ahead and make some recommendation on the powder coating?
If it's your...
That's what I thought it was. That's why. It's okay.
The powder coating on the steel structure is base bid. The powder coating on the aluminum panels is an ad alternate.
Is the ad alternate merely whether it's done in the shop or by a third party, or is it an ad alternate
It is an add alternate. The base bid for the aluminum panels is a mill finish, which would just be a natural aluminum finish. And I do have a sample of the panels. This is the mill finish aluminum. So it's a smooth finish. It's not something like galvanized where you've got sort of splotchy colors.
Has there been anything looked at with respect to reflectivity off of that panel? Its mill finish state. Has anybody looked at it with respect to what's going to happen when the sun hits it to the people who are on the south side? Or on, the sun angles such reflectivity off of that and some of the metal installations that have been done can create glare that is blinding. Has it been looked at at all?
Specific studies for it we haven't done any specific studies to look at the reflectivity off of it. There will be some, whether it's powder coated white or whether it's the aluminum finish. Sure. And we're aware of that, but we have not done any specific studies to that.
I think that should be incorporated somehow into our motion, that once that's up, it's going to be really hard to address. It should be addressed in advance of its installation. Can I add that, or does it need to come from Brian? Oh, we did get a second? Okay, so. Okay, so let me try and recraft it from the start then. We're going to make a motion for approval for the windscreen project, SRCA 130026, with the understanding or the recommendation of this board that you would take a hard proactive look at the trees that have been slated for removal, that when appropriate and possible, that they would be spaded and relocated on the property, and when that is not a case, that they would be replaced with something of similar character as a substitution or remediation, and that the finish of the windscreen that's currently listed as an add alternate would be reviewed in advance of the fabrication of the panels, both for reflectivity and that the finish, I think that it should be finished in a manner that's keeping with what staff is recommending, and that to the greatest extent possible, that reflectivity is reduced for the patrons to the site. Oh, okay, so we'll do that in a second motion. We'll do that one as a second motion. Okay. Got a motion? You have a second? That's my motion now, but a motion by, can I make a motion? Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And then with respect to the variance, I'd take a second motion.
Move approval for a variance for the system.
Got a motion? Okay. Motion by Mr. Casbright, second by Mr. Yost. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 7, other business. We have 3 items. A is the 2014 meeting schedule. Do we have to do any discussion on that item? It's really there for your information. Item B, do we need a motion on that? Okay. I'll accept, if there's no comments, questions or comments on the meeting schedule, I'll accept a motion for approval.
Second.
I move by Mr. Joyce, second by Mr. Doherty. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Item B is the election of officers, chair, and vice chair. Do we have any nominations?
There's a lot of people going today. There's a good chance.
No, I would move for re-election of our current slate of officers. Mr. Dudman as chair and Mr. Platt as vice chair.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item C is to adopt a resolution commending Terry Taylor for his years of service on the Riverfront Design Committee. I'm going to read it, and then we can discuss it. A resolution of the Riverfront Design Committee of the City of Oklahoma City acknowledging Terry Taylor for his valuable service on the Riverfront Design Committee. Whereas Terry Taylor has nobly served the citizens of the City of Oklahoma City as a committee member of the Riverfront Design Committee beginning in August of 2008 to September of 2013. And whereas Terry Taylor's fulfillment of his responsibilities was achieved with a heartfelt dedication to the well-being of the community. And whereas Terry Taylor brought his analytical skills and consideration of the facts to his decision-making. And whereas Terry Taylor's skills and experience in the field of real estate were reflected in the quality of the recommendations and decisions of the Riverfront Design Committee. And whereas Terry Taylor consistently treated applicants, citizens, fellow committee members, and staff with respect and courtesy. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Riverfront Design Committee hereby commends Terry Taylor for his outstanding years of service on the City of Oklahoma City Riverfront Design Committee. Adopted by the City of Oklahoma City Riverfront Design Committee on this 3rd day of October 2013. And there will be a spot for signatures. I'll accept a motion. If there's no comments, I'll accept a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Doherty, second by Mr. Yost. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8, communications. We have an administrative approval report. Item 1 is SRCA 12-004-0014 at 1503 Exchange Avenue in the Stockyards River District. Do we need to discuss each of these? Okay. Item number 2 is SRCA 13-00022 at 1501 South Central Avenue in the Regatta District. SRCA 13-00024 at 3232 West Reno Avenue in the Meridian Gateway District. Do we have anybody here to discuss these items, or do we have any discussion on the items? Okay. Item B is comments from the Planning Department.
Don't think we have anything at this time.
Okay. And item C is comments from the committee.
No comment.
Are we anticipating that we may someday have 100,000 of these items in a year? I'm just wondering why we have to have all those zeros in there.
Okay, item D is the next meeting date, Thursday, November 7th. I believe we do have items on that agenda currently.
Yes, we do.
So if there are no...
If I could just make one comment. I just thought back on the committee I was waiting, when we get into things like those trees and all, I just think that those are really can be touchy issues, and I think that they can come back on everybody. And I just think as we start going, there's a lot of trees down there, and there'll be demolition, and but to me, that's a good compromise to be out in front of those. If I understand that a lot of times things have to come out, but I think you almost have to have some kind of plan in place, or else it will really come back. And I think ultimately it would come back and reflect on us and everybody else in line. Because 68 trees of that size now, which I don't think, if they've all grown and done pretty well, they're probably pretty hard to spade many of them out. But even then, when you get them of that size, then it's just going to be that much more significant when you get 68 trees starting to come down. And like I said, I've been in probably 5-7 presentations, and to this time, this is the first time I've ever heard about the number of trees or anything else, because I think everybody had seen it as this very vertical thing, and I think the assumption was, and they show all the silhouettes of the trees behind it, so I think the assumption's been that it was going to be minimal impact, and 25% on 500 meters is a significant.
There are no other comments. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Have a motion? Have a second? Motion and second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned.